Welcome to the course, The Bible in Light of the Ancient Near East. This course will introduce you to the cultures of the ancient Near East, Israel's neighbors during the biblical period, and to the comparative research that examines the Bible's relation to these cultures. The Bible is the most extensively interpreted literary work in world history. Religious clergy, scholars, and thinkers have all attempted to decipher and comprehend this seminal piece. However, until the modern era, they did not have the resources to understand it within a broader cultural context. Pre-modern exegetes shared a similar picture of the Bible, a sacred book delivered by God and by definition utterly unique. The Bible was conceived as an isolated work. It was interpreted either within itself or in light of later religious traditions, but never in its original context. This is simply because the world had no knowledge of or access to this original context until the modern era. However, with the development of modern archaeology, the world discovered, to its amazement, a treasure trove of knowledge about the ancient Near East. Ancient peoples and languages came back to life in the archaeological excavations. The Sumerians, Hittites, Hurrians, Elamites, Ugaritic culture, and many others. Today, 2 centuries into this great endeavor, we own an unimaginable wealth of knowledge relating to this lost world, and we continue to gather more. As it turned out, the Bible is far from being an isolated creation. It was a part of a rich multicultural fabric of different civilizations formed via constant dialogue with them. Biblical stories and traditions, the creation, flood, Tower of Babel, and many others are best understood when read in the light of parallel mythologies in neighboring cultures. Biblical genres such as prophecy, law, cultic instructions, and wisdom have ancient counterparts that clarify and contextualize them. Most importantly, the ideas and concept of the Bible can now be seen in a comparative light. Biblical thought was developed as a response to constant contact with the beliefs and worldviews of the surrounding cultures. In some cases, biblical theology was influenced and inspired by these ideas. In many other cases, it rejected them and attempted to suggest novel, even revolutionary religious agendas. Both patterns gave birth to biblical thought, which later became the basis of Western culture. Our point of departure will be one of the most important places in the world for studying the ancient Near East, the British Museum, where findings from the ancient Near East are kept and studied. Tens of thousands of artifacts and monuments belonging to the biblical world are housed here. Let me take you to a special place in the museum where ancient tablets are deciphered and studied every day.
Well, first of all, welcome to the Department of the Middle East again.
Thank you.
We're standing in the arched room, the beautiful arched room. It dates to about 1840, so it's one of the few parts of the museum in still original condition from the time. So this used to be what we now call the British Library. And if you look, you see essentially it is still a library, except for on the ground floor, we have these wooden trays inside the book presses, and these trays are full of cuneiform tablets. So if you like, we have an ancient library on the bottom floor now. Mm-hmm. So we're dealing with quite a large area of time, of course, wide geographical expanse, very different environments, many different types of people, many different languages, but it's very useful and indeed necessary to generalize a little bit. So some common words we're going to come across are Mesopotamia, which is the broadest term for essentially what we now call Iraq, but also important parts of what we now call Syria. The most important thing to understand about Mesopotamia is from the very name itself. The clue is in the word. So Mesopotamia means the land between the rivers, and they're talking about here particularly the Euphrates, and over here the Tigris rivers. So the beautiful arched room functions as a storage area, but it also functions as a study space. And Most of the people who come to this department to study want to look at the cuneiform tablets, and we have about 130,000 in our collection. They range from about 3000 BC to the 1st century AD. It's an enormous spread of time. I've got just a few examples here to show you, but maybe something about the objects themselves. They are made of clay, or strictly speaking, it's actually silt. So the rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, bring down the silt from the sources, and this is what they're made of. So it's not like modern potter's clay, it's a much coarser material. It's abundantly available, it's freely available. All of the cities are along the rivers and the canals. This is everywhere, you can't help but write on clay, and it's perfectly suited. So what you need is clay that is moist, but not too damp that you can't make a clear impression, but not too hard, also that you can't get your stylus into the clay. So it has to be that sweet middle spot where it's just strong enough to take the impression. Now, here's one I prepared earlier. You see, of course, there's no ink. This is not like modern writing. They don't have a pen. They're not drawing across the surface of the tablet. What they have is, if you like, a kind of printing. So this is it's not actually a stylus. It's a piece of reed from the south of Iraq. And the reeds grow abundantly in the rivers. So like the clay, you just can't help but use these things. And all you need is to chop a size about like that. And then you cut it lengthways to create a very handy device. We're not quite sure exactly what the stylus looks like, and there must have been different designs, but it's essentially a split reed, held in the hand perhaps something like this, with a tablet, maybe something like that, and you just press and press and press. So again, we're not dragging across the surface, it's pressing and lifting. And all you need to do when you finish your tablet is just leave it in the air to dry, not in the sun, but in the air, and it will remain as crisp and clear as the day it was written for thousands of years.
John has shown us a small sample of the rich Mesopotamian culture. As John explained, Mesopotamia is the name of the area located between the Euphrates and the Tigris. This area was part of a region known as the Fertile Crescent. The land of Israel lies in its center. In the next lectures, we will briefly review the history of Mesopotamia as a background for our discussion of the Bible in light of the ancient Near East.